Jamaica, and indeed good afternoon to the world. We are coming to you from the prestigious Caribbean Military Academy at the Jamaica Defense Force Up Park Camp. My name is Dennis Brooks, and you are tuned in to a virtual symposium here coming to you live in Jamaica. The ripple effects of COVID-19 pandemic have devastated infrastructures and systems across the world. It has forced governments to confront the fragility of our infrastructures and government systems, especially in the areas of finance, economy, public health, and education. The ravages of this pandemic have caused the government to closely examine how it can build greater resilience and strengthen its abilities to manage and respond to crises such as COVID-19. Well, this is especially so in our economic, health, and security sectors, which are amongst the hardest hit by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So how do we prepare as a nation to combat a second wave, possibly, of COVID-19, as well as other catastrophic events? The Ministry of National Security, in partnership with the Jamaica Defense Force, has sought to answer that very important question through its inaugural virtual symposium entitled Resilient Policies for National Development, or simply RESPOND. It is being facilitated by, as I said, the Caribbean Military Academy at the JDF here at Up Park Camp. Discussions and presentations at this RESPOND 2020 Research Symposium have thus far focused on anticipating and reducing the impact of internal as well as external shocks through careful planning and preparedness in the areas of health, security, and economy. This online town hall today is your opportunity to get all your burning questions answered, especially the questions of how do I transform my own business to withstand the impact of such shocks as COVID-19. Of course, my name is Dennis Brooks, and joining me to my immediate left is Senior Superintendent of Police Desmond Brooks from the Planning, Research, and Development Branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. I have Dr. Maurice McNaughton, the Director of Center of Excellence and Innovation at the Mona School of Business at the UWI. And I also have Thaditi Tulla, the Project Manager of the Program Management Office at the Ministry of National Security. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you. Well, you can participate by sending us your comments and your questions on the Nationwide News Network social media pages, as well as the Ministry of National Security Facebook pages. We're also on Instagram. You can follow the conversation at Nationwide Radio, at MNSGovJM, and at JDF Soldier. So let's get into it. First of all, Thaditi Tulla, I'd like you to explain to us the challenge, first of all, that we confront in acknowledging that there are threats to the best thought out policies. There is almost an inertia sometimes to successful implementation of policy. So put what we're doing into that context.
So, national security essentially is the immune system of the body of Jamaica.
Yes.
And as such, if you have a weak immune system, then you're vulnerable. And if you have a boosted immune system, then you're stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the notion of resilience is always is the same notion as risk management in business. And what that does is allow us to think about the worst case scenarios and effectively plan and prepare for that.
Absolutely.
Now, national security has been planning and preparing or transforming for the past 3 years to address a scenario like this in terms of retooling. Yes? Mm-hmm. And then now we're contemplating that in order to have all the other organizations, the public and private sector, to be a part of the conversation, then you have this symposium for RESPOND to address and to discuss to highlight those issues.
Well, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. How has the conference been going thus far? We've had some very interesting, very capable and qualified panelists lined up since yesterday. How has that been going?
It has been beautiful discussion, beautiful presentation, right? And the public has been loving it. They have been responding and engaged. So everyone loved the platform in itself was very innovative, and everyone is appreciative of that.
Absolutely. And so in terms of focal points going forward, what are some of the key lessons that we've been getting to unpack and sort of digest in order to improve our implementation?
So the three main areas for this symposium, and of course we will have others, is security, resilience in security, resilience in health, and resilience in economy. And essentially, it is COVID would have highlighted and catalyzed just our thinking and contemplation of the weaker areas so that we can strengthen.
Right. Absolutely. Let me bring you into the conversation, Doc, because from the perspective of management, business management, I think there are many lessons that we can learn that we can bring into other spheres. How do we, produce better resilience managers even?
So, and let me tell you, I love that metaphor about national security being, well, Jamaica being the body and national security being the immune system. What I like about it really brings home one of the points that we've been making is that a big part of resilience is your ability to respond, your agility, right? Because, listen, and it's, I don't know if the metaphor was deliberate, but coronavirus is new. And so even the best immune system in the body has never seen this before.
Yes.
So it has to figure it out. So a lot of times we talk about resilience, and you made the point about resilience being your capacity to anticipate, which is a big part of risk management, to plan, and then to respond. I would suggest to you that for business nowadays, perhaps the biggest part of resilience is your flexibility and your adaptability and your capacity to respond. Because there's a lot of things going on out there, and COVID is obviously an extreme example of something that we've never seen before.
Yes.
But in the business environment, in industry, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much volatility, that organizational resilience really comes from your capacity to respond to something that you have not seen. And one of the big points that we're making in our own contribution to this forum is digital capabilities. What that really gives organizations is an agility and a capacity to respond. If you think about it, the ability to respond is your ability to sense, assimilate information, analyze it, and then take the right decisions. That's very much an information and data-driven process.
Right.
And so your digital capabilities become a big part of your resilience.
Definitely. You know, SSP Brooks, one of the things that jumped out at me when I heard Mr. Tuller's opening comments is the importance of the fact that this conference would have been in the planning for some time. It feels like it is a response to the immediate environment, but it has been in the planning for some time, which underscores the importance of preparing and not merely responding. As a constabulary man, how does a constabulary, which is largely responsive, go into preparation mode for unplanned shocks?
Okay, thank you, Dennis, for the question, and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, let me say that the issue of national security, the importance of business continuity,
Yes.
and country continuity. Now, first thing, you have to have national security, continuity in national security. And let me tell you what I mean. Everything going to be hinged on national security. And notice I don't just say police.
Yes.
Our law enforcement, national security. The entire architecture from law enforcement to the military, to the Department of Correctional Services, even down to the judiciary. That there is need for that kind of stability in order for the country to go on. Right. So, in respect to the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and you would have seen where we have been involved. In fact, any form of disaster. If you call 119, most people are likely to call 119. Sometimes it's not a police-related matter,
Yes.
but it is about life. It's about life and health. And you'll call 119, it requires that the police, there's an expectation that the police should respond. And we respond. So we respond to, we have an understanding of Jamaica's vulnerability to natural disaster. And we have a framework in place to respond to that, be it hurricane, be it earthquake, and be it COVID-19. So the Quarantine Act, for example, places a duty and a responsibility on the Jamaica Constabulary Force to perform certain functions. So while, for example, a lot of businesses can encourage their members to stay home, the Jamaica Constabulary Force
Quite the
had to be
contrary.
out there
Yes.
to ensure that people stay home. If not anything for just that,
Right.
for the sake of business continuity. So for us in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, we have a duty to protect life and property. And in so doing, we have to recognize the country's vulnerability, and we have to be adaptable. So we have to implement proactive measures, not just to wait on an event, but to equip the organization with necessary skills and capability to be resilient in the aftermath of major disasters.
Absolutely. Saditi, you know, I bring it back to you because from a ministry perspective, your fundamental job is to get policy right. And sometimes people think that policy or the importance of policy is overstated because at the end of the day, it's operations, it's human beings who are difficult to predict how they will behave. But from a policy management perspective, how important is it to establish the right resilient policy framework? Are we overstating its importance?
It is of absolute importance. One, like this forum would have, a symposium would have allowed the opportunity for a vast stakeholder conversation to inform the policies, and I'm going to share a few.
Right.
Since 2016, financial year 2016-17, the government would have invested 2.5 billion then, and then doubled to approximately 5.5 billion, and then after that 11.1 billion, and then 20.2 billion in resourcing the national security infrastructure, essentially boosting this immune system. So we have been preparing in terms of digital transformation and three primary areas: technology, infrastructure, and social development. Right across the sector for all the agency under the umbrella of national security. Now I want to speak to one particular policy which is currently being developed, which is our cybersecurity policy.
Very important.
Now, cybersecurity has an element which is called critical infrastructure. Now, critical infrastructure is where we examine with extreme risk management, right, what would happen to our country if it is a particular sector could be attacked or overwhelmed, like we're experiencing here. So not only the public health, but JPS, for example, the power systems. What about our water resources? What about our airport or telecommunications? In other words, we're as national security, we have to be there and contemplate the worst case scenario because we are first responders to address them, right?
And many people don't see these sectors or areas as
national security. You're
yes.
right. So even now, as we contemplate resilience, which is why I use that public health metaphor to say national security is safeguarding not just against crime and violence, but is also safeguarding against the economy, right, and the other ministries and sectors, public and private sectors and community, essentially affording effective immunity and an opportunity for us to not just grow but to prosper.
Definitely. So then, you know, in looking at this symposium, this conference, and we look at the various speakers presenting their research or their, I mean, I don't want it to be a talk shop, quite frankly. I don't want it to just be another place where people talk, and then everything that you would have presented would go on file 13. How do people practically benefit from the presentations that would have been made or access them?
So one, of course, we have the Caribbean Military Academy and the policy writers within the ministry will synergize together. We'll review all the videos, capture all the salient points, right? And that will formulate one papers, but also inform the ongoing policies that are currently being developed. And also, as we go out to speak to our various stakeholders and to let them aware about, for example, cybersecurity and what needs to be happening within their sectors relating to national security. All of this that is being discussed here will be useful and be put to effective use to strengthen national security.
Definitely. Thaditi Tola, as I said before, is the project manager of the Program Management Office in the Ministry of National Security. If you're just joining us, it's the inaugural Resilient Policies on National Development Symposium. This is the town hall aspect of the symposium, so feel free to participate by virtue of commenting in the comments section of whatever live stream you're watching, or by following us on social media on Instagram at Nationwide Radio, at MNSGovJM, at JDF Soldier. We will relay your questions and comments to the panel. The Virtual Research Symposium, it's really aimed at helping the government in its handling of the massive task of developing resilient policies to manage and indeed mitigate the fallout of such catastrophic events as that of COVID-19, as we've been discussing. Now, I want to shift the conversation more in your direction now, Dr. McNaughton, because we are at a good crossroads because we are forced to appreciate it. And maybe if we were having this conversation in June of 2019, it would be a harder sell because people won't get it. But now people get it. They see the importance. And so when you talk about digital transformation and resilience, do you find that people get it? And even students doing an MBA at the Mona School of Business, they get it now and they're interested in researching these areas.
You're absolutely right. And I don't know if I would call it a good place. I would prefer to be anywhere but where we are
Yes.
now in relation to COVID. But we are at a necessary place.
Yes.
Let me give an example. I mean, up at the University of the West Indies and the business school in particular, we have for the past decade trying to introduce mechanisms around online learning, e-learning, and taking advantage of technologies. Yes. And the take-up has been very anemic. Because a lot of lecturers, for instance, who have a more preference to a more traditional approach, refuse to take it on. So the technologies have been there. As an institution, we were forced to, with the onset of COVID-19, to, within the space of 4 weeks, move all of our delivery online.
Yes.
Deploy the platforms which were there before, but do substantial training. And even the administration of examinations has moved completely online. So sometimes adversity breeds innovation.
And do you find that organizations or departments that would have been already leaning towards online learning, for instance, that they prove to be more resilient? I mean, I would imagine that
they prove to be more adaptable, which is a big
yes.
component of resilience. Eh?
Okay.
So we see it across the board. You see it in the banking sector. Some banks were more ready than others with their digital strategy. You see it in education. If your kids go to one particular school, then they may be struggling. You have other schools, maybe because they're better resourced, were completely ready to go online. It happens in retail as well, right? So the truth is, we've been having conversations over the course of the past year and a half, 2 years with organizations and executives about digital transformation and their readiness. And quite frankly, there's been a level of recognition that it is critical to be ready to make the transformation because of the threat of competitors. So if you're in banking, for instance, even if you're a big dominant bank like NCB, you have to be wary of the fintechs, right? These small, agile, digital entities that are coming into the market. But quite frankly, even though many organizations recognize the urgency of this, there's been a great deal of complacency with actually putting the right strategies in place. Again, something like COVID has forced that agenda, and many organizations have been forced into making the transition. And again, some were just readier than some. What I would hope, and in fact, what I suspect, and certainly for us in academia, but in other industries as well, that post-COVID, whenever that is, I mean, who knows? If it's the end of summer, if it's next year,
Right.
I don't know what post-COVID, where that is on the time horizon.
Yes.
But the pendulum will not swing back to where we were.
And that's what I was just about to ask, that whatever post-COVID looks like, and we're not sure what it will look like, or if we will ever be post-COVID, or maybe post-crisis then, that it would have revealed so many of our inefficiencies.
Indeed.
It
And
will,
opportunities.
and it will provide so many opportunities to say, we're not going back to that anymore. This is where we will go. This is the new normal, so to speak. So when we look at digital capabilities, for instance, you describe it as a key enabler of business agility. I'd love to hear, how you would explain to somebody who is saying, I was not as agile before, I would like to be. How do they get on board or get up to speed very quickly?
The how, well, let's first talk about the notion of agility. And there are a couple of quick examples. So let's take mobile, right? Mobile is one of the core digital capabilities. The ability to engage, to reach, to interact with your customers using the mobile channel, right? In terms of agility, when we think about mobile, we really shouldn't think of the mobile phone as a device. We should think of mobility as a state of how you engage with your customers, right? So what the mobile phone is not just a device or channel, it is an enabler of mobility. Mobility means that I can reach my customer or my consumer, because you have customers and consumers. JPS can tell you about that. But I can reach them wherever they are, whenever they are. And so it's an important shift in the way organizations think about cloud computing, about mobile, about big data and analytics, in terms of the capabilities that it gives the organization to be more agile, to engage with your customers in a very fluid and flexible way.
You mentioned mobile technology, and I immediately think that so much more of our usage of our mobile devices, because we're not just talking about phones, we're talking about the wide range of tablets and other mobile devices, that so much of our usage is now about data and data consumption, which brings us then to the reality is that data is the new oil, so to speak. It is a major resource, it is a major currency, and those who are able to provide data at affordable prices, and those who are able to manipulate access to data are the ones who will also be increasingly agile and resilient.
Absolutely, because data is what drives intelligence and your capacity to sense what is going on and to be able to respond, right? And one of the projects or one of the initiatives that we have the opportunity of engaging in right now is actually working with the Ministry of Health and Wellness around their own response and responsiveness of the public health system to COVID-19. And a big part of that is how they are able to harness the data resources, significant data resources that they have across the health sector. But you know, having those data assets is not efficient. You have to have an ecosystem that is agile enough to be able to harness and draw on those data resources and process them and integrate them to drive decisions, right? So, for instance, you know, you're pulling in data from all of the 300 and whatever health service delivery points across the country. Having that data in an agile and timely way tells you exactly what is going on across the health system, the public health system, and increases your capacity to respond in the way you deploy resources. Just the same conversation we're having about monitoring your vehicles and not only being able to optimize the utilization of them as assets, but to make your logistics far more efficient. So that's the power of data, right?
Indeed.
And it's not just having the data as an asset, but it's your capacity to harness and use that to drive decision making. It's absolutely critical. That's what separates the winners from the losers.
Definitely. It is a digital town hall, so it's defined by your participation. Feel free to send us your comments or questions on Facebook. Just look for the Ministry of National Security on Facebook, as well as Nationwide Radio. And you can also follow us on Instagram on our various platforms. The Ministry of National Security is at MNSGov. That's MNSGOVJM. You can also follow us at Nationwide Radio. And indeed, you can follow us at JDF Soldier. We are monitoring all our platforms and taking your comments and questions. Thank you very much to Dorothy Taylor watching from New York City, from Errol Sadler in Florida, David Thomas in Bogwalk, Ramon Borrell in Oxfordshire, UK. Thank you very much, as well as Ronaldo McKenzie in the United States, asking the question, well, commending Jamaica for how it's handled the COVID crisis, asking the question, how have our security strategies been informed by the COVID-19 experience? Even you, Thaditi, you make reference seamlessly to security in a very epidemiological kind of a way. It is informed by the experience.
Yeah. So we have been preparing for, as I say, for the past 3 years with the doubling resources, approximately 40 billion spent, and then realizing the digital significance and also data. Just 2 days ago, I was at MOCA, where a data science team, right, which is pretty much on a platform, same platform that is used by Google, Facebook, and so forth to integrate their data and to interrogate. They were in a training session with a team out of Silicon Valley, right, to be exploring how they can manipulate all the data sets and integrate all the technologies within the national security architecture. So there's a lot of retooling that is happening.
Yes.
Right? And so not just for technology operations, but also organizational change. Say within national security, right? Permanent Secretary would have spearhead a number of retooling, laptops, tablets, new screens, integrations, and so forth. We're also retooling with respect to technologies like project management, agile project management, and portfolio management, program management, and also system thinking, a whole host of things coming together. Right?
And I'm going to put to the three of you something that I see emerging as a potential headache for policing, for business, and from a policy perspective. Now, you mentioned the importance of data, the emergence of data as a major currency, but then that elevated importance of data and us collecting people's data gives us a mandate to protect that which we collect.
Yes.
And so now we have the specter of data protection, which becomes extremely important. And we've seen new legislation as it relates to data protection, which mandates people to protect the data that they collect, which now I would imagine, Dr. McNaughton, that there are businesses that have been in the business of collecting people's data as part of their business model. They must now, based on my reading of the legislation, have someone employed who guarantees the protection of that data. That's a major cost item now in your budget.
It is. I mean, you from the media would have been a big part of the agitated conversations that were taking place when the bill was being discussed and debated several months, sometime last year.
Yes.
And there were a lot of concerns about the extent to which it is a little bit burdensome, because we have really taken the European-based, what is it, the GDPR? I forget, but anyway, the European-based equivalent, and pretty much adopted it almost wholesale. That's what it looked like last year. Now, we've passed, it's now law. We passed it a few weeks ago in Parliament without much fanfare.
Yes.
So I didn't hear anything from you guys, so I assume that it is now to your satisfaction. But you're absolutely right. It does now put an additional obligation on organizations to have, for instance, what is called a data controller. And in fact, right now at the business school, we're busily preparing workshop program of training for organizations to not only understand the Act, the provisions under the Act and their obligation as businesses, but to also train the persons who are going to take over this role. But you're absolutely right. It does introduce, again, while the intent is a protection of the individual and the rights of their information, it does introduce a fairly considerable burden on organizations and entities, and indeed on the government, which now has to set up some kind of central oversight capability for this. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out. But
I am very interested, even from a policing perspective, to see how you then manage questions and issues and conflicts in terms of somebody complaining maybe that their data wasn't adequately protected.
Right. So from a policing perspective, and long while we had a draft bill and the various discussions, our legal department were fully seized with the various discussions, and we're having the different engagement within the organization as it relates to data protection and our role as custodians of people data. So I wouldn't say we're way down the wicket, but we're building out the capacity to be in compliance with the law. And in fact, we have our technology branch. And then if I need to say something, because COVID has brought about this increased discussion about data and using data. But remember, not too long ago, we have had a discussion, certainly for law enforcement, about increasing use of technology, and that came about out of the increasing need to rely less on the human factor as evidence in court, because we see a lot of witness, getting frustrated with the system, witness just not turning up, and a lot of cases that we thought, were sound cases as a result of witnesses, not being available for whatever reason, those cases fell through. So we had long recognized the need to embrace technology where we can replace the physical person, put the evidence to the suspect. He has no choice than to accept, because he's seen himself on a CCTV committing offense. Right. So The JCF has long embraced that, and we have had quite a few successes, some high-profile cases.
Absolutely.
Based on that. So the issue of data and data use in law enforcement have been well recognized before COVID. Certainly, in this COVID age, we have, because we have had areas quarantined, and we have areas that we have, monitored, and we have seen a shifting pattern in the time where criminal offenses take place,
Yes.
and the locations. And again, we can interrogate those data to get a deeper understanding of, the minds of criminal. They wait until the curfew lift, and then you see the incident of offenses going up during that time period.
It is a fact that the criminals, even as a result of COVID, have had to be more resilient and agile in adjusting when they commit their crimes. And we've seen the numbers of people who commit crimes just before the curfew hours, and then they go inside.
Well, then you have given them that credit. I didn't want to put it that way, but that's a fact.
Yes.
So it requires flexibility and adjustment from our players. And the Jamaica Constabulary Force is way down the wicket with that. We are building out our systems, and we, as I said, we are relying more on data, more on technology, and less human intervention.
Definitely. It just underscores the point. If criminals and criminal organizations are prepared to be agile and resilient, what say more we, the law-abiding citizens who are seeking to build a society that is resilient to their threats? Now, I have a very good question that actually emanates from something that I was going to ask anyway, but this person online says, cybercrime is a feature on the global arena as pandemics push more online transactions. What steps are being taken to protect citizens and businesses? And will there be a national insurance plan to cover businesses and citizens from these type of criminal activities? The truth is that as people have been in lockdown situations across the world, as people have had to work from home or work smart and embrace flexible working arrangements, we spend more time in the digital space. And so criminals have responded to that by targeting people more in the digital space. Then that now becomes a new frontier of crime fighting, which, as you said, through the technology branch, there has been more work being done. But I'd love to hear how then we begin to build greater digital resilience for people who are spending more time in these spheres. Taditi?
So, as I'd mentioned, we started out benchmarking against countries that have had similar challenges before and have resolved them. We visited Colombia, Brazil, New York, California, Mexico, China, and other partner countries. And with respect to cybersecurity in particular, realized that we didn't have a robust enough infrastructure. So the government would have invested, and now we're building out one of the most state-of-the-art infrastructure for cyber protection, not just for the government, but for the entire country. And also an academy to support. The academy would support high school and even earlier, so primary school, persons becoming sensitized and aware and can enter an entire industry where cyber security is concerned. And also the infrastructure, the academy, there's one more area which I'm not remembering right now. But
yeah,
so we're way down the wicket, so to speak. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, which is very good, because this question comes from another viewer online who says, how can citizens access the tools that will better enable them to be digital ready, as most of the transactions have now moved to online platforms? They're asking a question about integrating data and technology, data integration with technology, as well as to look in that direction then. many people are just, as we were saying before, becoming aware. And so there's a greater sensitization to it. But for instance, from an academic perspective, it does take time to trickle, I wouldn't want to say trickle down, but it takes time to have that awareness disseminate to a more savvy population.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of online activity and there's a lot of naivety online. We're actually currently involved in a program, if I give it a little bit of a plug, the Caribbean School of Data. But it really is a response to the urgency for what we call digital literacy.
Yes.
And data literacy as a subset of that. So the truth is, if we're moving to a digital economy, which we are, and I shouldn't even say moving, if we are in a digital economy, then if you're not digitally literate and digitally savvy, then you can't compete. And unfortunately, at this point in time, our mainstream curricula in primary and secondary and high schools don't include digital literacy as an integral part of that curriculum, right? We have to think about digital literacy today in the same way that we thought about numeracy and literacy 30 or 40 years ago, that these are universal necessities, right? Every citizen, every child has to be literate. Well, in today's world, you have to be digitally literate,
Right.
because you're going to be a digital citizen, and if you don't have that savvy and capability online, then we're going to be creating a society that is not competitive.
Definitely.
Right? So right now, the work we're doing around that program, I would have to think of it as being remedial, because it is recognizing that people are leaving high school and there's a kind of vocational space where you can retool those capabilities because they don't come out of high school with those capabilities. But ultimately, we have to bake that into our mainstream curriculum. And we're at the moment looking at a program with maybe I shouldn't say too much about that, but the Broadcast Commission of Jamaica has a sort of national responsibility for this kind of citizen level capability, and we're looking at working with them to see how that can be streamlined. So that's absolutely important.
One, I think, Dennis, I believe that organizations, institutions have to manage this transformation. When you look at the profile of persons who are, committing cybercrime, the age profile that is, and the age profile of the victims, and I'm going to take just the victims of latch scamming
Right.
for the time being, you realize that there is need, it is an increased need on part of institutions, banking institutions, financial institutions, to understand the profile of their customer, their client, and to institute necessary arrangement to ensure that their customers are not, fleas from cash. So in addition to the education, I believe that organizations have some responsibility to protect their customer. And I've seen a lot of them doing that, if I do a transaction before it almost is complete, I get a text message.
Yes.
I just use my card there, and I should call a number if I didn't use it, right? So I believe that is one effort, one attempt to at least protect customer. So I believe as we transition, that should need to be managed. Right?
I've heard you, and you mentioned about protecting customers, and I've heard you in various spheres treat the members of the public as customers of the JCF.
Yes.
And so I would ask, in what ways, for instance, we're talking about transformation and technology, is, for instance, the JCF using technology and transformation to improve service to its customers? I mean, many people have been highlighting the importance or the need for an improved customer experience with the JCF.
Right. So for the first time, the JCF has established a technology branch. And the entire outlay of technology projects and services are being managed by that branch, and that branch is headed by an acting DCP. Now, well, the portfolio is headed by an acting DCP.
However, in respect to the various technology components, what we're trying to do, and I think I would like to examine from two levels. There is need to manage assets. So we want to ensure that our service vehicles, our police vehicles, are efficient. And so we have system in place where we can monitor the behavior of our vehicles, behavior of our drivers. For example, our vehicle should not idle. That's the engine running for a long time. If that happens, it sends an alert. And somebody call and say, why is the vehicle parked for so long? There's no point in having a vehicle parked at Falmouth Police Station for 3 days, not moving, not working, while at Denham Town, they're suffering for a shorter vehicle. So in order to optimize the utility of the resources, we have gone the technology route. There's also the need to place vehicle or to dispatch a vehicle where the problems are. We're coming from a place where someone will call 119 and then we'll send out on our radio which unit is near so and so. No, we can look at a system.
You're not asking, you're telling.
We are telling you that, okay, this vehicle is here, there's a problem there, turn and address that problem. And we can see in real time what is happening, if it is being addressed, is being addressed according to our policy and standard operating procedure. So we are managing policing, embracing the availability of technology. We have smart checks. We're rolling on smart check. And I'm going to allow maybe our technology man to speak to this at an appropriate time. But why stop you, Dennis, for example, and spend 5 minutes, asserting who you are and all of that? Our camera can just tell us, okay, Dennis, this is Dennis' vehicle. Is he on our wanted list? Is he on our person of interest list?
I hope
And
not.
I hope not. Right away we can have information on the vehicle, and all those things, and we can make decisions quicker. And importantly, if Dennis is perish that thought, but for any reason you're wanted, you're on that list, and we will let you go, we allow you to leave, then we know that. The managers know, the commissioner know, your boss know, and now you have to account. So what I'm saying that the technology is being embraced, is being used, is being rolled out in the police force. Body camera, we have completely overhauled the policy, and we are in the process of acquiring new body-worn camera, and those will be used to manage police operations. Let's say manage in real time. So you don't no longer get a report that a police officer does something. You as manager can see what is happening and make necessary intervention.
It's a major tool of accountability. It holds the officer wearing the body cam accountable, but also it is a way of verifying citizen accounts versus police accounts.
Absolutely.
And we would hope that it would be it wouldn't just be a policy. And that's also I was alluding to the inertia. It would be
a management tool. It's a management
would
tool.
Manifest in improved quality of service.
Right. So it's a management tool.
You were saying that?
Yes, so I'd just like to mention, say, the citizen portal, which is being developed, because projects tend to be working on the future state rather than what is current. So the citizen portal would allow citizens to be able to access the services of the police, right, and also to report, right, remotely on their tablets and from home and so forth, right. There is also Jamaica, well, you mentioned Jamaica, you mentioned
CCTV
digital
system.
ticketing and so forth to allow greater accountability within the force, so that if, like you had mentioned, the scenario, if someone were to release someone that is wanted, you'd have to account for that and so forth. Right. So there is a whole effort to integrate and to use data to better serve the public, right? And to assure that there is there's trust and accountability within the security architecture.
Indeed. And I don't want to take you into the justice system, that's a different ministry,
Yes, yes.
but the Department of Correctional Services, which many people have concerns about people being quote unquote lost in the system, if you have greater digital record keeping, you're able to monitor your census then in real time, and I would imagine that that would be a significant improvement as we digitize the correctional service.
That is true. So I'll just briefly speak about, things that are happening and projects that are underway, right? So for the Department of Correctional Services, there's a great effort to strengthen security, add cameras and screening protocols and so forth. And also, we're currently working on building a new facility, a modern correctional facility. Within FLA, there is bullet tracks machine to ensure that we are marking the bullets and the guns,
Yes.
The legal ones. And within IFSLM, right, Institute of Forensic Science and Legal Medicine, right, we have DNA database, right. So that is best in class within the region. At PICA, adding additional kiosks and also border management system to integrate so that we have like a joint intelligence. Yes, and there's a whole host of things happening within the JCF, right, in terms of increased unprecedented mobility, and not just vehicles, but vehicles tooled with the technologies available,
Fit
right,
for
to be able
purpose.
fit for purpose, right. That is beautiful, as well as 119 emergency center retooled with a video wall, with data science, with CAD systems. So we are having a modern national security system that is integrated and ready to protect and to serve and to provide the kind of resilience that is needed for our contemporary period.
Viewers, listeners, thank you very much for staying with us. We are having this virtual town hall here at the Caribbean Military Academy in conjunction with the Ministry of National Security and, of course, the Jamaica Defense Force. And we have been discussing various resilience policies and the importance of resilience. We thank you for your questions and your comments thus far. Persons have been weighing in via our social media platforms. We're going to be wrapping up in about 15 minutes. So we continue the conversation looking at the importance of technological transformation in building resilience in all of our various sectors. We've been focusing a lot on national security and health and economy because these are critical areas that have been revealed, and we see the exposures then that COVID-19 has even brought. But when we look at the challenges and the opportunities and the balance there, we're seeing then that yes, a lot has been done, a lot has been planned, but in terms of successful implementation, because sometimes we have in Jamaica an implementation deficit. We have very good policies, very good plans, very good policy makers, but somehow there is a gap between planning and execution. Dr. McNaughton, do you see the will and the drive to execute in ways that we have been maybe lax before?
So certainly at this point, and this is from the vantage point within the enterprise, within business, we don't have a choice. Businesses don't have a choice. You have had to respond to this issue. And as I said earlier, adversity breeds innovation. And the truth is, one man's adversity is another man's opportunity. There are some organizations that are going to respond better. Well, everybody knows Zoom, right? Zoom has suddenly become the poster child of, you've had the WebExes and the the Google Meets
and
and
the go-to-meetings,
the go-to-meetings,
none of which are new.
No,
None of which are new apps.
But there's something
suddenly-
about Zoom that has elevated them, and now Zoom is like Pampers, right? If you're going online, you say you're going to Zoom, right?
Yes.
And so these kinds of environments create opportunities.
Definitely.
In business, at a country level, I think the opportunity that we have, for instance, in the public health ecosystem out of necessity, because to be responsive to the COVID-19 epidemic and potentially the upcoming second waves and third waves, you have to optimize and harness the data assets that we have across that ecosystem. So there's been an urgency out of necessity, I think, both within the enterprise and within the public sector. My hope is, and my belief is, that we're not going to fall back into the complacent mode, because we have been, right? I mentioned even up at the university, we've spent a decade putting in these technologies and not using them because people are just not willing to change. But we've been forced into it. Let's seize the moment and let's take advantage of it.
Then I want to jump in from an organization perspective. We have not taken implementation for granted.
Yes.
What we are doing is using, we call it MEL, Monitoring and Evaluation and Learning Framework. So you have a policy, programs, projects, they are monitored and evaluated. Persons are held accountable at different stage, and there's also a learning framework mechanism where you learn as you grow.
Right.
So it's not sufficient to have a policy or a program or a project going, but there's a monitor and evaluation aspect of it that has to be robust, active, and at different levels, implemented at different levels. And then you have to learn.
Let me utilize advantage of prior knowledge and put to you a question about, for instance, the implementation of less lethal tools of law enforcement, for example, tasers. And you have been at the forefront of preparing the JCF for that transition. I've heard you in various places speak to this. This is something that is the subject of that same approach?
Yes, yes, indeed. And in fact, from a bigger perspective, the JCF has embraced less lethal options.
Yes.
Right, in our use of force policy. And taser is just one aspect of it. Right. We have different form and different levels of less lethal option, including mere presence. A lot of persons don't understand your mere presence is a use of force.
Yes.
And we have used that effectively to deter people from committing offenses. Right, so that is one of them. And, you know, but what we have done, we have developed a policy around our less lethal option, policy around taser, and we are looking at, you know, how to implement it and the legal and constitutional consequences of using taser in Jamaica for the first time. So I think that we are awaiting some advice from the Attorney General as it relates to implementing that. But once we get that go-ahead, it's implementing, and of course, Jamaicans should brace themselves to see fewer kind of, you know, those videos that you see go around where police and motorists, those kind of tussling. We expect adherence to laws and policies. You understand?
Duly noted.
Good.
Duly
A
noted.
word to the wise.
All right. I have a question, and I'm going to put it to the ministry man. The question says, what are your thoughts of a super ministry with intelligence gathering for health, crime, and community engagement? Asking for a friend.
A super ministry. Well, that is really speaking to the collaboration between ministries, having committees and joint groupings and working groups to really address and acknowledge that we're a part of an ecosystem, an
Yes.
interrelated system, and realizing the relevance. Like now, COVID is really pointing that out.
forcing
So
it.
now you're realizing the dependency of the health of the people in itself, on the economy, on health, on education, and so forth. So many interlinkages. So that is
In other words, it's not that we need a super
Super
ministry.
ministry, it's that
We
we
need
need to
greater collaboration and
collaboration,
coordination and a
right.
joined up government approach.
Absolutely.
right, which is
but
where
Tabiti, health is a national security issue, you know.
Absolutely.
Health is a
Yes.
national security issue.
Or
which
national
is
security
so
a
so
health issue.
national security, right, would contemplate all the considerations in all other ministries, and sometimes even
Absolutely.
we're having this symposium and this discussion. I just want to mention one thing to say that the planning capacity and capability would have been strengthened within the Ministry of National Security. Otherwise,
Yes.
wouldn't be able to invest. Every year we got a doubling budget, and we would have trained, say, about over 200 persons in the PMP and the Scrum Master Agile certification, and get them certified across the full MDAs, right, to ensure that we don't just plan, but we're able to execute and to deliver on time and within the budget given. Yes.
I get you. I have a question, and I'm going to put to Dr. McNaughton, but it is a question that I could easily put to SSP Brooks as well as you, Taditi. The question is, what are we doing with the dissertations or research works that may offer solutions but are archived at universities? This is a very good question because we often point out how many PhDs and MBAs there are in the JCF, and most of which were written with a thesis about the JCF, or somebody at the Ministry of National Security who does an MBA or some other kind of program and does a thesis about change management or something. What do we do? And this points to the university as a producer of new knowledge.
Indeed, indeed. Well, and again, from the perspective of the business school,
Yes.
a lot of our own research is what we call applied research. So it sits on active engagement with the real world, right? And we're not just sitting up in an ivory tower writing papers and filing them away.
Yes.
We're actively working on what we call action research. So work that we've done in terms of mobile payment systems, for instance, or in big data analytics. We're actively working with organizations. And while there's published work that comes out of that, there's tangible artifacts that also emerge from that inform the way organizations conduct their business. I think that the engagement that we currently have the opportunity to be working with the health sector on is also anchored around research. And a lot of what comes out of this is going to inform and help to define a more efficient public health sector. Again, so it's very tangible applied work, and the University of the West Indies is actively involved in that. So I take the point that a lot of times academia is criticized for being abstract and irrelevant and not having an impact in the real world. But I think there are also many instances where there's very tangible applied research that is informing policy or actual operational activities in business.
What about you, SSB Brooks? Do you think enough utilization, there's been enough utilization of the research that emerges sometimes from within the organization?
All right, so let me answer you from two levels. So what we do with the people, because we also send persons to be educated.
Absolutely.
Right, so and we try
At the university.
at the university, right, at the universities. Right, and of course, placement is important. So we look at the areas of the area that they concentrate on and try as much as possible to place it. That's what we do with people. As it relates to the academic work, though, we believe that there is a lot more that we can do in terms of utilizing, research and the benefits of research. We believe that there's a lot more we can do to implement them in practical law enforcement work.
I have a question for you from Facebook, simply asking, why is it so hard to join the JCF?
Well, I'm sorry about that person's experience. The JCF, like most law enforcement organization, has standard, and there are different levels. There are different entry levels, and you need to initially meet the entry criteria and take an initial test. And there's physical examination, medical examination. There's a fit and proper test, you call it, the vetting, and there's different levels. So it's not hard, but you have to exercise some patience. So it is our intention to employ the best person for the job, right? We want to populate the organization. And I'm not saying he's not the best person or a good person, but we have to make sure.
Right.
And the effort in making sure requires some time to check people's background, their temperament, and the extent to which they are trained. I want to bear something in mind. We take people at age 30, up to age 30, to join the force. So just imagine 30 years of socialization and a few months of training to transform you into a police officer. So we have to ensure that you're trainable, you're adaptable, and you're fit for our purpose. It takes time.
Okay. We're in the final moments of this town hall, and I'm going to put a question to the three of you, and I want to hear all of you in it from your own vantage point. So we acknowledge the context within which we're operating. We acknowledge the COVID reality. We acknowledge the general need for resilient policies. From a Ministry of National Security perspective, or an academia perspective, or a policing perspective, what things do you think we've been working on in your neck of the woods, or things that you've wanted to implement or transform that COVID would now, you look back maybe in a few years, it would have been the catalyst for speeding some of those things up? Taditi?
So, to support the digital transformation that is happening within the ministry, you have the whole aspect of change management, which relates to people and their willingness to utilize the technologies that are being introduced. COVID would have catalyzed that incredibly. Now, they have to, right? Zoom, well, all these platforms, they existed before, and I have persons coming and say, oh my God, I discovered this great tool, this is Zoom, this GoToMeeting, it is so exciting. But you were always trying to advocate what they were unwilling to utilize or to try. COVID would have done a great job, great change management in that respect.
What about you, Dr. McNaughton?
So let me give you, if you'll allow me, two quick perspectives
Sure.
on that. Certainly from the standpoint of academia, we're forced to undertake our own digital transformation. And there's a pedagogical requirement that goes with going online. Going online is simply not using these online delivery tools like Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate and then teaching in the same way that you've always taught. Right? We have to embrace this as a new medium, but also as an opportunity, right? So that university, post-COVID or fall semester, it's not going to look the same way that it looked 3 months ago.
Right.
But what that does, it also gives us the opportunity to extend our reach, because you're not now confined to a physical space called a classroom, right? So we could be delivering our programs in Africa, for that matter. So I think we have to embrace that opportunity. From the perspective as a business school working with industry, working with businesses, digital transformation at a strategic leadership level is something that we have been advocating. We've had an audience around that, but as I mentioned, there's a degree of complacency. I think the urgency is going to increase. I think a big part of that urgency is a cultural shift, is equipping organizations with the technical data scientist skills, and we're going to be a part of that, but we would encourage organizations to, again, carpe diem, right? Seize the moment.
Indeed, indeed. And finally, SSB
Yes,
Group?
Fully in line with what Dr. McNaughton had said. And I'm hoping that my commissioner is not listening, but I was always, weary of going to those Monday morning meetings, Commissioner.
Yes.
Traveling all the way from Old Harbor, navigating the traffic to go to those meetings. Now I can log in
Yes.
in the vehicle along the way, or in from home. Commissioner don't know where I'm at. But I'm engaged in that meeting. I really like it, and I don't want Commissioner to go back there. But from an organizational setting, though, I believe that I believe that it gives us the opportunity to collaborate some more, and also to leave that leave the lessons. So there are lessons learned in respect to how you even approach someone today in the organization. There is that I call it the kind of professional dispatch in which you engage people, right? Recognizing that you may be carrying the virus, or I may be carrying it, or both, but you have to keep some distance, and at the same time you maintain a relationship and you engage the person, something we take for granted. There's a concept called hand hygiene. I didn't know the concept. You take for granted. And these things are simple, they're simple, but profound in a sense where you say you wash your hand. Until we were taught
How to wash our hands.
How to hand hygiene, and there's a science behind it.
Yes.
And those are tangible things that I think will outlast the organization and the individual in this post-COVID era, if that time will ever comes.
Yes.
So there's a whole lot. But certainly I don't see the organization going back from a lot of the lessons learned.
Absolutely.
Or the adjustment in respect to how we manage the crisis.
Thank you very much, SSP Desmond Brooks from the Planning, Research and Development Branch of the JCF. Thank you very much to Dr. Maurice McNaughton, Director of the Center of Excellence and Innovation at the Mona School of Business, as well as Thaditi Tolla, the Project Manager of the Program Management Office at the Ministry of National Security. Well, that's it from us here at this inaugural symposium. Since yesterday, the academic, public, and private sector experts have been sharing their ideas on how governments can craft policies aimed at strengthening our abilities to manage and respond to crises in the health, economic, and security sectors. I thank you for sharing your ideas as well. It's been a very important conversation. The Ministry of National Security, the Jamaica Defense Force online town hall was brought to you by the communications team at the Ministry of National Security, led by Elaine Oxman-Livesette. Thank you very much to the team here at the Jamaica Defense Force's prestigious Caribbean Military Academy. And as well, thank you very much to the team at Nationwide Radio, Jackie Wong, Jermaine King, and Cara Powell. Till next time, I'm Dennis Brooks. Stay safe out there.